Okay. All right. Well, thanks all for coming for our inaugural Career Conversations event. We're excited to have some fantastic alum come back to NIU, even in this virtual space, to share their experience, their knowledge, their expertise, and their sage wisdom that they've gained throughout their years of life after NIU. So the purpose of the Career Conversations is to give current NIU students, current Huskies, an opportunity to think through the career of not just doing well, but doing good. You know, the career paths that are in front of us in the nonprofit and NGO sectors are maybe not as clear as they are in other fields, but we have some amazing alumni. We'll hear from 5 of them today. And the amazing alumni will explain how their journeys, what they've learned throughout the way, how being a Husky and being a nonprofit NGO studies major, or back in the day, it was called civic leadership and community engagement, how that prepared them for a path of nonprofit or NGO career success. Before we introduce the speakers, I wanted to give an opportunity for the Dean of the Liberal Arts and Sciences, Bob Brinkmann, a chance to welcome everybody to this inaugural event. And then I will introduce the speakers, and then we'll have a chance to ask them specific questions one by one. And if there's time, then maybe folks in the audience can pipe in with their questions. Julianne will be monitoring the chat. I'll be monitoring folks' faces. But first of all, just welcome and thank you so much. It's really exciting to see so many folks on a Monday, even on a rainy Monday day. So Dean Brinkmann, if you could lead us off with some words.
Sure. First of all, thank you, Mark, and everyone else in the center for organizing this wonderful event. I'm really thrilled that so many alums are interested in being part of this and nurturing on the next generation of graduates from this program. We really appreciate you being here. It really means a lot to all of us, and especially to the students. I just want to say, you know, a lot of people can easily identify with a College of Engineering or a College of Health and Human Services or a College of Visual and Performing Arts. But what is the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences? And in reality, we are what we like to call ourselves the heart of NIU, and that we are the core of what an American university is all about. Some of you might have heard of some universities in Europe like Oxford or the Sorbonne or some places like that. And those universities are very old, and they have a very different style of doing education where students focus in on one particular thing through their whole career. But in the American university system, we focus broadly in the liberal arts and sciences, meaning we focus in on the social sciences, the humanities, and the natural sciences, and we try to put it all together in an interdisciplinary way so that it has real meaning to the world. Now, I can't think of a major that brings all of this together, or a unit, a center that brings it all together, like the Center for NGO or for Nonprofit and NGO Studies. This center is doing so much great work in the community, and if we're the heart of NIU, this center is the heart of the college, in that they bring a lot of care to people and to organizations, not just here in DeKalb, in the Northern Illinois region, in Chicago, throughout the Midwest, throughout the country, but also throughout the world. We have some of your faculty working in places like Haiti and Cuba, and as well as in our corner here in DeKalb. So we reach local and we reach worldwide. And that really matters. That idea that your center is doing so much great work and spreading the mission of NIU of so much that we believe in, not just in our community, but throughout the US and the world. And our alumni, I'm sure will talk about the importance of that work in their own communities as we go on tonight. So I just want to end my comments by thanking you all for being there, and to recognize that the work that you're doing, that our alums are doing, and the work that you will be doing in your careers as you go on into your life after NIU, will be transformative for yourself and for other people. And really, you are carrying the mission of NIU and the mission of the college forward. So thank you, and have a wonderful evening tonight.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dean Brinkmann. We're excited to have you here. It's really important that we're part of a college that's greater than ourselves. And I'm glad that we're seeing the connections between what we do here and elsewhere. So there is something in the chat for those who are not able to see the chat. Any attendee that keeps their camera on, Gretchen Sprinkle will put their name in a drawing for a $20 Amazon gift card. It really helps your speakers out to see your nonverbal feedback. So for those that do have the ability to turn your cameras on, that would be wonderful to see such smiling and inquisitive faces. You can blur your background. You can have a Star Trek background if you'd like. We can send folks to Huskies or an NGO background if that would be wonderful as well. Without further ado, I want to introduce the panel that has graciously given of their time this evening. So these are 5 alum from an NGO, and I will just introduce them by their last name. So to begin, Cameron Barnes is a seasoned strategist specializing in forging powerful partnerships, with a deep-rooted expertise in nonprofit philanthropy, leadership, and justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, or JEDI. As the founder and principal consultant of Effective Emergence, Cameron aims to weave advocacy, cultural competency, and racial justice into nonprofit fundraising and leadership frameworks. Previously, Cameron has worked for nonprofits such as Taproot Foundation, United Way of Metro Chicago, and US 2020, Chicago Public Schools, as well as interning at Emerging Practitioners in Philanthropy, After School All-Stars, and Council on Foundations. If you can unmute yourself just to say hello so that your image pops up for everybody, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, hey folks. Cameron, thank you, Mark, for the intro, and thank you all for being here. Looking forward to sharing a little bit about my journey.
Great, thank you, Cameron. Next we have Isabel or Belle Lamarre Diaz. Has been working at the Schuler, that's 1L scholar program for the past 4 years, and is currently a college advisor working with first-gen low-income underrepresented students. Belle is currently applying to graduate school to pursue a master's in higher education, administration, and policy. So the same thing, just say hello so that your face pops up.
Hi everyone, I'm Belle, and yes, Schuler with 1L, not our Schuler here.
And next, in terms of alphabetical order, Wilfredo Najarro graduated in 2020. Double major in poli-sci, political science, and NGO studies. Wilfredo just graduated from University of Wisconsin Law. Beginning this month, he will be working at a firm in Madison doing energy regulation and environmental litigation for corporations. While waiting to start, he has been working at the Academic Enhancement Program at UW Law. He is also volunteer at the Community Immigration Law Center, where he assists in filling out asylum applications for people looking for asylum. So during law school, he clerked at the Wisconsin Supreme Court and worked at the Wisconsin Department of Justice. He was also a summer associate at the firm he will be working at. So Wilfredo?
Hi everyone, I'm Wilfredo.
And if you've taken the elevator on Zulauf, you'll see his smiling face in class. Going to pass it on to, there are some technical difficulties, but at least introduce her. Dejia Randle graduated this spring and received a BS in Nonprofit and NGO Studies. She's now moved back home to Chicago and works as an associate nonprofit consultant in Geneva for AM, PM Solutions and Services. I don't believe Dejia is here yet. We'll have an opportunity to say hello when she does log in. And finally, last but not least, Gretchen Sprinkle, one of our first NGO graduates, CLCE graduates, has spent the last 9 years working in the nonprofit sector in DeKalb County. She has spent the majority of that time in administration with titles such as finance assistant, office manager, and executive director. She now works for the Illinois Network of Child Care Resource and Referral Agencies, INCRA, INCCRRA, in the Birth to 5 Illinois department. The department is working on community systems building and collective action to improve Illinois' early childhood education and care system to create more equitable outcomes for children in Illinois. Gretchen is working on a master's in early education between work and raising 3 young children. Gretchen?
Hi, thanks for having me.
Okay, wonderful. So thank you all. And let's get started with some of the questions that we have prepared. And this is a discussion. So if someone says something, if one of the panelists says something that triggers something that inspires you to contribute to the conversation, feel free to add. But we had sort of decided who would be answering which question. So without further ado, tell us a little bit about yourself. Why did you pick CLCE or an NGO? And what were you looking for when you graduated? Let's start with Wilfredo.
Well, so I guess my path to NGO was a little different. So I think it was either Dr. Shadman or Stephanie always call it the major of discovery. So when I started off at NIU, I thought I wanted to be an engineer. And I completely was like, no, that's not working for me. I probably within 2 weeks before classes started, I was like, I actually hate physics. I'm going to major in political science and we're going to go from there. And my initial thought was that I wanted to be a probation officer. And so near the end of my freshman year of college, I was Googling, figuring out what probation officers did. And then I figured out that they worked a lot with nonprofits. And so at the time, it was still called CLCE. The last time it was called that was my freshman year of college. And I was just going to minor in it. And so I did an internship in probation, and just what I Googled, they worked a lot with nonprofits. And so I worked with Stephanie a lot, how it would work with my schedule. And it seemed like it was a great balance with political science. And at the time, I really didn't know a lot about NGO studies. And so I was just sort of well, this works great with my schedule. My advisor convinced me it's great. I'm just going to roll with it and see what happens. And then I really started enjoying it. One thing that I always have valued of it is the practicality of the major, in terms of the accessibility internships and the accessibility to working with actual people, I thought was fantastic. And so from there, was what I sort of built on was I really enjoyed it and I wanted more access to the practical opportunities. And in order to do that, I sort of had to shift from I think I started off as a minor, and then I went into the major my last senior year, and I started working with that major since then. And so since then, I pretty much have my hand full in political science, but I also have my hand completely full with NGO studies.
Great. Gretchen, tell us a little bit about why you chose the major.
Yeah, so I think a lot of an NGO study or CLCE majors had kind of a twisty-turny path to get there. I went through several majors. At first, I thought I want to major in history. And then I thought, well, maybe I'll do family and consumer sciences, which is not even called that anymore. And then I had a kind of friend or mentor come up to me with this printed out trifold about this new N-Gold program. And I mean, the budget was so small. It was printed on an HP printer. Not professional at all. But it really caught my attention because I knew I wanted to help people and I just didn't know how. So I got into some of the introductory classes. Actually, Julianne taught the very first class that I took, and I fell in love. It's this is what I want to do. I want to help people, and there are so many ways to help people, and this gives me the structure to be able to do it. And I mean, I'm sure we'll talk a little more later. I have had kind of a winding path since graduation as well, but the beauty of this major is there are so many different ways to apply it, and it is unique in the fact that not many people working in nonprofits right now have a specific training in how to do so with integrity and to fidelity.
Would either of our Cameron or Belle like to tell us how your winding path started?
I can share a little bit. I also stumbled into this major. I'm definitely like type A Virgo personality, had my plan coming into college. I was going to teach history in high school. I had everything laid out. And I actually transferred from a community college. So once I was getting ready to start at NIU, I met with my academic advisor. We were talking about, my plan and my classes. And when my advisor at the time mentioned, okay, on your third year, so meaning that 2 years of community college, I'm expecting 2 years at undergrad, but now he started talking about a third year. I was like, whoa, that's not gonna work for me. I gotta graduate, I gotta pay for this. And so I kind of freaked out because I was like, okay, this is like definitely not what I was expecting. I was very driven and I knew what I wanted from my college experience, and now I wasn't getting that. And so, I found myself talking to another like general advisor, and just kind of talking through like what it was that I really wanted to do and why I wanted to teach and why I was passionate about, political science and all of these different things that I was learning previously, to when, nonprofit and NGO studies came up. And just kind of learning more about what the major offered, in kind of similar to what people said before, and the flexibility of, I wasn't learning how to run an animal shelter or a food pantry or something. I was learning how to work with nonprofit organizations, really at a structural level that gave me the flexibility to still figure out exactly what it was I wanted to do, because I knew that the skills that I had built, I'd be able to apply anywhere. And so it was a really great opportunity to just try new things and intern at like 1,000,005 different nonprofit organizations, meet people and all those things, to really end up figuring out what it was ultimately that I wanted to do. So yeah, exciting.
I think I'm the only one that hasn't shared. Very similar story. I was looking for a way to support community, a way to help the folks around me, and so I was actually introduced to, at the time, NGold and CLCE programming, or degree, and I was introduced to it through a therapist. Actually, I was in therapy through NIU, and she just gave me the pamphlet, probably the same pamphlet that Gretchen saw, and just went for it, and realized that it was much more aligned to the type of work, the ethos and the pathos that I was looking for, and haven't looked back.
Great. So glossy pamphlets, not necessarily the best way to get things. Maybe it felt really, you felt the love when it was grassroots, because it was the HP printer. Keeping it old school sometimes is better than the high gloss. So Julianne, there was a misunderstanding. Dejia is coming. She thought she had to log back in at 6:40, not 5:40. So little typo. We're good. So as soon as she comes, we'll be able to edit the conversation. Did you have a passion that you could identify when you left NIU? We have Belle give us a start with that question.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I definitely, like, as I was going through my educational path with NGO, came like into it thinking, okay, education, teaching, supporting students in the learning process. But I did a lot of different like internships throughout NGO. I did work with the Penguin Project, which is a musical theater for special needs children. I worked at Kishwaukee Community College. I did work with one of the many women's shelters in DeKalb. And so I really got to see all these different pieces and different like types, if you will, organizations, and learned so much from each of them and how they function and how, their systems work cohesively. But I think ultimately at the end of the day, I came back to education and, the pursuit in this case of a higher education. I had really great mentors at Kishwaukee College who really helped me. And that ironically was like one of the last internships I did before I graduated, but really kind of solidified for me where I wanted to be and what I was working towards. And so I was fortunate enough to find or be kind of closely connected to a college access program back in my own community. And so being able to connect it to those values of access to higher education, especially for the students that I work with, and those kind of core components was really like a perfect match for me in the end. And I've been there, my whole post-grad career at this point. So definitely was the path that I'm on, and continuing to do so, especially with grad school and continuing to work with higher education and things like that.
Wilfredo, you wanted to weigh in on this question?
Yeah. So I guess for me, like, I sort of have taken a way different path than what I ever left NIU with. When I left NIU, what really interested me a lot was something like almost like a therapeutic, it's normally called progressive prosecution. And the idea is that you fix basically you assist the major flaws in the criminal justice system from the prosecutor side, because the prosecutor is the one who decides most of the charges, etc. And so, and I would say that I had a very strong interest with that and working with the undocumented community. And so when I left NIU, I was like, well, I'm for sure being a progressive prosecutor. Like, this is what I want to do. I did some work for a judge who was very open to like helping individuals who couldn't afford services. And so and I sort of ended up in the whole opposite path of that. And really, I think that my passion for helping people in terms of having a justice system that's fair, along with providing services to people who aren't documented, comes from a lot of people who are on boards of nonprofits, are a lot of people who are partners at firms, at least here in Madison. And so I see that as an opening and working and at sort of like a pathway. For example, like in the immigration justice clinic where I do some asylum applications, what the president of the board is a partner at like one of the biggest firms in the country. And so I think that like having access to those kind of resources allows you to step in a different kind of role. And I think stepping into a leadership role that I guess is sort of like a different way of helping people. I don't know if that makes total sense, but.
Other folks on the panel want to weigh in this question, the passions that you identify while being a student at NIU?
So I did not have like a clear, defined passion leaving NIU. I'm a first generation college student. I grew up in a very conservative community and household, and NIU just kind of opened my eyes and really changed my perspective on a lot of that. So I was just kind of beginning my own equity journey and getting passionate about social justice, but not anything in particular. And really, it's taken a lot of trial and error and being in different roles and seeing the way systemic issues really impact individuals that has led me to finally find that my passion is in addressing early childhood education and care needs. But I couldn't see the forest for the trees when I first got into my career, and a lot of it was just who do I think is helping my community right now. And being able to go through some of those different roles, it gave me a better idea of the big picture and where I fit into that. I did not have the opportunity to do any internships when I was an undergrad. I was working almost full time, and I couldn't afford to not work and take an internship, which is why I love that there are some paid internship opportunities now, because that may have
hastened my journey a little bit. But definitely don't be afraid to change your mind or try a few things out.
Cameron?
Sure. Yeah. Very similar to Gretchen as well. So I first generation college student. I think to be honest, when I was coming out of school, I wanted to do something that was a little safer or something that I felt like I could be really good at, because I needed to pay rent. I needed to make sure that I, make my ends meet. And so I jumped. I think that one of the things I was really interested in is really understanding how large organizations worked, and being closer to Chicago and to the larger institutions there. And so so I jumped in through AmeriCorps Vista, and worked with an organization at the time called US 2020, was housed within Chicago Public Schools. I was there, during that year that they shut down a ton of schools, and at the time CEO was being indicted for corruption charges. So it was a crazy time to be there. So got a crash course on what it felt like and what it looked like when large institutions by and large fail, and what happens when bureaucracies fail, not only their constituents, in that case students and their families, but their employees as well. And so from that point got really interested in figuring out, okay, how do you build up, at the time didn't have the language quite yet, but how do you build up resiliency, not only from within yourself and your staff and your team, but also resources. And so that's why I went into fundraising and figuring out how I could never be in a position again where I was writing great programming and KPIs and metrics and so on and so forth, and then have it sit on a shelf. And so it was largely self-interested in that way.
Thank you. I think a lot of common themes about finding passion in circuitous routes. It doesn't necessarily have to be a class. And I am hearing the importance of paid internships. So unfortunately, the dean had to leave. I was going to ask him to, I hope he heard that. We'll make sure he hears that in the future about supporting paid internships. Because you can't expect to be doing this for free on your own time after what you have to do to make ends meet. And, a lot of our students have the passion from the experience of being a first generation college student and or someone who comes from community college. The fire of the desire to succeed doesn't have the same path that it always that people think of when they think of traditional college age students. So that we have a diversity of experiences here, I think is important to underscore for everybody. So you're not less than. You are you're a full Husky just because you're a first generation, just because you come from interior college or undocumented, you're still a full-fledged member of the Husky family. And the fact that you found us here at NNGO is really amazing. So thank you. I'm going to start with Cameron this time around for the next question. So how did you sell your degree at NAU? We have a difficult time finding, we're very unique. I came here at NAU because of the uniqueness of Engel. It is still one of a kind, liberal arts and nuts and bolts, international, local NGOs, local nonprofits, social justice with management, that the uniqueness means that it may be a little too unique to your employers. So how did you sell this to the folks that ended up employing you?
Yeah, it really depends on who I was talking to be honest. I think, Dr. Schroeder hit it on the head in saying that you get kind of this this wide ranging or almost this duality of like spectrum of the types of folks you're working with. And so when I was, connecting with the enterprising kind of, prototypically capitalistic minded folks, it was nonprofit management. It was leaning in on the social entrepreneurship certificate that was made available through the business school. It was leaning in on, Dr. Shadaman and others teaching us how to analyze and review 990s and discerning the organizational health. And then when I was, working with the folks in programs or the folks that actually are doing the work, it's referencing Dr. Schuler's class. It's talking about the, you know, the learnings rooted in anthropology and in sociology that that is the reason that we're there in the first place. And so it was, in my opinion, really a gift to be able to be fluid in the way that I was talking about the degree, and then making sure that I'm using that to connect to the folks that I'm connecting or that I'm talking to. But yeah, it is definitely a gift and a curse sometimes, because you can be fluid, but in the other sense, it's not accounting. It's not, I know how to read your books and that's it. But if you put in that extra time to really understand within yourself and how you can relate to others, I think it's a really, really great asset to navigate conversations and relationships.
Great. With apologies for the miscommunication, Dejia, welcome to the panel. We're so glad you are here. The question that we'd ask people now is, how did you sell your degree at NIU? If you want to take a moment to get settled, or if you want to take this one right now.
Okay, one second. My camera just unfocused.
Okay. Yes. Those of us who have been at NIU during the pandemic, we all remember the Zoom meetings and the Zoom conversation. So take your time. We're just glad you're here and able to join the conversation. Wilfredo, how did you sell this?
Yeah, I guess for me in my field, which I sold it a little differently. I think what Cameron said was really important was like the fluidity of the degree itself. So I always approached it pretty much from a three-pronged perspective. The first is the practicability of it. In law school, you have something called OCIs, which is called on-campus interviews. And so law firms come and they interview different law students. And I got asked about a lot about NNGO a lot. And the one thing I always sold on was the practicability of it, and going on and like meeting people and talking about people from different backgrounds. When I was in undergrad, I worked a lot with an organization that helped people who were undocumented. Actually, I took a class with Professor Schuler on where we helped them develop a program. I also worked a lot. I did an internship actually with We Care Pregnancy, and that was the number one question I got during my OCIs was, I'm a cisgendered male. Why are you working in a pregnancy center? And that was so great to talk about that opportunity and talk about the programming that I was able to help them with. And I've sold a lot with the practicability and going on and meeting people, going on and doing these administrative meetings. And sort of goes to the second prong, which is the administration side of it. I took a class with Julianne about programming and developing programming and how to make sure that those programs are effective for the people who need them. So this summer, I was actually brought on by the law school to basically start a tutoring program in which before it's like they have one tutor for like 50 kids, which is just not practical. And so they need to do it at a one-on-one basis. And so the skills that I learned there and what I talked with my boss during the summer was that I learned about this programming and developing a program that can be carried forward for people in the law school, basically. And the last thing really is that I always sell it is learning how to connect with people. I want to say it's Professor Schuler's class. We learned about a concept where it's like, it's not enough anymore for people just to be bystanders. Instead, they need to step into the shoes of people and be able to talk about like their experiences, work through their experiences, and actually be in the shoes, like in the front lines and talking. And I think he uses a term related to this deepness of empathy. And that's something that's always stuck with me, and something that I sold a degree on, is that in NGO, you learn how to work in that aspect of people. And so I think those are the three prongs that I usually sell the degree with.
Thank you. Dejia.
Yes, hello. Sorry about that. There's a lot going on. Trying to get on here. But am I answering my questions that we talked about, or am I answering?
We're going in order of the way we asked them, but why don't we, since we're tell us about yourself. Why'd you pick an NGO and what were you looking for when you graduated? And then we'll catch you up with
Okay. Okay, well, my name is Dejia Randle. I graduated in this spring, with a Bachelor of Science in Nonprofit and NGO Studies. And basically, I started as a pre-med student. I started because I basically wanted to help people, and I thought that meant becoming a doctor. And when I came to NIU, it was like, ooh, I don't really want to do that. And somebody pointed me in the direction of this major, and it was like, yeah, you can still help people and make a difference in the world, and you don't have to be a doctor. I didn't know anything about it, and so that's really what drew me towards it. And I knew from the first class, like from the first experience, it was for me. And I felt more than prepared when I graduated, honestly.
and what were you looking for when you graduated?
I was looking to be able to get a stable job, honestly. That was number one. And to get a job that I actually like to do, like doing what I did in that role. So that was the top, those were the top two. Something that I didn't have to go to graduate school or get extra education for. I could if I wanted to, but I wanted to have something fulfilling that I could do with my bachelor's degree.
Thank you. The other question, so we were asking the question about how you sell the degree, because the degree itself is unique, and that comes with, really exciting challenges, and it also comes with the ability to have to explain. I'm going to ask this to Gretchen. What does your degree actually mean? I know you had some experiences in your first round of job interviews. How did you go about selling your degree at NIU?
I think
Oh, sorry.
were you asking me, Dr. Schuler?
Yeah, I was gonna,
Were you
yeah,
asking?
and then
Okay.
we'll come back to get you warmed up, Deja, answer that one as well.
So I think the hardest part initially upon graduation was that, I was a CLCE major, and community leadership and civic engagement was exceeding the character limit on most applications. And I feel like a lot of applications were rejected because nobody knew what that meant. I was one of the alums advocating for a name change. I'll never forget, I got an email back from the American Red Cross in Peoria saying, we're sorry, but you are not, your degree does not qualify for the position that you're applying for. It's not related. What are you talking about? This is like a volunteer management position. But once I got the interview, it was a lot of talking about, I know kind of the mechanics of running a nonprofit and the things that you have to do to keep all of your ducks in a row, but also a lot of the theory of why nonprofits exist and why it's so beneficial to the community to address problems this way. And as I've gone further in my career, it's really fun to see people's eyes light up when you're in an interview. When you say things like, I understand that the people closest to the solutions are the ones experiencing the problem, right? You have, this degree gives you this whole background and this whole way of viewing the world, in that I can't come in and save you, but I have tools to help you get what you need. I work a lot in community systems building, and that's what I do all day. It's connecting people. I think Wilfredo mentioned that a lot, connecting with other people, and knowing kind of all of the different barriers and filters you have to get through to make that connection and make a change, and knowing how a nonprofit is, I don't want to say a cog in the system, right? Like that's kind of a negative connotation, but you're one gear, and it's going to take working with the business sector and governments and then actual community members to address social issues.
So, Belle, you want to weigh in on this, how you sold your degree?
Yeah, definitely. I think like that's my favorite thing to do is sell our degree and talk about it all day long, because I think it is kind of like Wilfredo said, like so adaptable. Like there's so many different components and skills that you learn that depending on your audience, there's so many different things that you're able to talk about. I definitely, when I first, started working in the field after graduation, the organization that I was with was shifting from an AmeriCorps model to full-time employees. So initially, they saw my background, they saw what I did, and was kind of like, I don't know what that is, but like here, basic entry-level position. I started as an academic coach. And during that time, like once I actually started working there and I was with students and staff and I was writing programming and I was, talking about all these like measurement systems and things like that, they were like, whoa, this girl knows like way more than we really understood initially. And so I think while at my first kind of go at it, I wasn't quite where I wanted to be, because I'm like, I could do so much more. But once I got there, I really was able to kind of demonstrate like, look, this is what I can do. These are these skills that I have, which really, helped me excel and, continue to grow in my career. And the other thing that I just wanted to mention is that, like, obviously I'm a college advisor. I work with high school students all day long, helping them kind of discover what the heck they want to do, what kind of colleges they're looking for, what kind of degree programs, and all the time I'm hearing from students, I want to work in social justice. I want to help my community. I want to, work to solve these world problems that we're all experiencing. And so anytime I tell them like, this is what I did in college and this is what I studied, they're all like, oh my God, that's so cool. Like, that's exactly what I want to do. And I'm like, great, I'm glad you're excited, but there's very few institutions that actually offer that type of program. And so, it's really, I think, something that will grow as the years go on and more, people hear about it, because I think, like we mentioned before, that obviously nonprofits have been around forever and they've been working on these things for a long time. But to be almost like classically trained in nonprofit management and these different things is so unique, and I think really helpful to kind of help accelerate your progression in the field. But also I think, like we mentioned as well, through the lens of equity, inclusion, and advocacy. Like that's something that comes up all day, every day, especially working with my student population in higher ed and gaining access to higher education. Like I always say, I'm an advocate first. All I'm doing is, advocating for my students, helping encourage them to reach higher and do all these different things. And so that background and, very deep level of understanding has helped me, sometimes probably anger my organization a little bit, but kind of push back against a lot of these systems that, have been there for a long time, that I'm like, hey, that's not okay. Like we should be doing this differently, or we should be thinking about this in a new way. But I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for being able to come in with that knowledge and be able to make those changes, even, within my organization, and maybe getting me fired, but I didn't, so that's good.
Well, let's hope that once this goes viral and everyone in the world watches this video, your employer will be so excited that you're brave enough to speak out that they're going to give you a promotion. So, Cameron, you have your hand up again, and Dejia, you want to say something as well, but if we can, I want to give Cameron
Sure. Yeah, I just wanted to quickly, plus one and something that Belle said about, the training that she got through an NGO allowed her to kind of show her organization that she had, a level of expertise and rigor that they hadn't seen before. I know that, and I'll use that as an opportunity to kind of answer one of the questions for later, advice for current students. The part that I hated the most, I think, early on in my career, was feeling discouraged by looking at job applications or looking at new jobs that said you had to have 3 to 5 years of experience. I firmly believe, we could talk forever how messed up that is, but I firmly believe that this type of programming allows you to get to that equivalent straight out of school. And I wish that that more, HR generalists or recruiters, the nonprofit space, knew and understood that, especially about this programs and ones like it. So I just wanted to share that that was my experience as well. And for the students that are listening to this, know that you unquestionably have at the very least 2-3 years of equivalent experience just by going through this program. So don't hesitate to apply for those jobs that try to put some unnecessary barrier in front of you.
Yeah. Breaking down barriers is what we do best in higher ed, and particularly in NGO. Particularly with a justice and equity lens, like you're working with Cameron. Dejia, how do you sell this degree?
Man, it's hard to go after all of that. Man, I agree with everybody, honestly. It is I just feel like it's a privilege to have found this degree, this department at this school. It was just like, wow. In combination with everybody else's suggestions, I really just honed in on the experiential learning within the classroom and the internships. Any experience that we had that we created something, I guess collaborated on something, did something with the community. I took note of all of it and I just used it. I feel like it's all experience. It all is worth it. It all adds up to 3 to 5 years of experience that they're looking for once you graduate. It's hands-on from the moment you step in the classroom. And so that's what I really sold. I saw that I did things. This isn't just theory to me. It isn't just formal education. It's that, and it's, real world experience and looking at society through the lens of like nonprofit work and what we do and how we can do it the best way.
And the exciting thing about this year, there's been 10 years of people graduating. So there are not just, it is a unique program. And I'm glad that it's been, creating good trouble, to paraphrase John Lewis, radicalizing, to use Gretchen's term. But there are 376 of y'all in DC, in Washington, DC, all over the state of Illinois, in Iowa, in Indiana, in Wisconsin. So even though we are unique, the team is growing, and it's really great to see folks being able to pay it back as well. So, I have a couple more questions that we prepared, and looks like we are going to have time for students and others in the audience to ask your own questions in the chat. How did you go about finding your first job? Why don't we give a start to Cameron and then see who else wants to weigh in on that question?
Yeah, sure. So I touched on it earlier. I did a AmeriCorps Vista through an organization at the time called US 2020. So it is still an organization. They rebranded, but they're doing STEM mentoring programming across the country in different sites and different host cities across the country. And so I was housed within Chicago Public Schools and did partnership development, did program design, did evaluation design, did set up the national metrics and KPIs for the organization. For those of you that are new to AmeriCorps or Vista specifically, I personally believe it is tailor-made for folks coming out of an NGO program, because you are by design being put into a new organization and building up their capacity, building up their systems and their operations and their programming at an early stage. And so oftentimes those organizations are well connected, not super well resourced, but organizations that are really ripe for folks like you to support them. The catch, of course, is that it's AmeriCorps and that you have to be willing and able to not be paid a whole lot for that work. But that first year of service was truly invaluable. I have no question that I wouldn't have gotten my next role and wouldn't have the connections that I have now if I hadn't done that in the beginning.
other folks want to weigh in on this from the pet? Oh, Gretchen?
Sure. So I kind of tied myself down pretty quickly after graduation. I got married about a year after I graduated with my undergrad. So I looked at AmeriCorps, but I just couldn't make it work, right? So I ended up doing a semester of the MPA program before I figured out it was not for me. Masters of Public Administration. Sorry, trying to use fewer acronyms, which is hard in nonprofits. But all of my jobs I got through like face-to-face networking. So through the internship program, as part of the MPA program, I was placed as the DeKalb County Nonprofit Partnership intern for DeKalb County Community Foundation. And when I left the MPA program and had to leave that internship, I found my job because of connections I made in that role at a family service agency. And then when it was time for me to leave family service agency, I had connections with the, at the time, executive director of our local United Way, Kishwaukee United Way. So actually, Birth to Five Illinois, where I work now, is the first time that when I filled out the application, I didn't know who was going to be reading it. And even then, I knew who ended up being my boss before I then got promoted. And she was able to kind of talk me up to the other person helping interview me. And all of it was from talking to people at DCNP trainings and going to events at NIU and volunteering on different committees whenever I could, in whatever role I was in at the time. Never underestimate making connections with people in the community or people in other organizations, because it really does help you in the long run when you're applying for these jobs.
Gretchen, if I can hop on just a quick sec too, thank you for that, because NNGO is the only department I know on NIU's campus that does a networking event every semester. We have one in person and one online. We kept up with everything during the pandemic, but it's exactly because of what you're saying. We know that learning to be socially networked doesn't happen. It's not a one and done. It's continuous conversations where you get used to and you get comfortable talking to people. And so I'll, at the end of this, I'll put the date. We have another one coming up this fall. And that is exactly why we do this, is so that you guys can connect to our current students, can connect to alumni, can connect to people in the community. And like you said, people are wonderful about like, oh, hey, I know somebody here, or you should talk to this place. So thank you for bringing that part up.
Absolutely. And I will throw out there, I do not like small talk. I consider myself an introvert. I find those networking events very, very draining, but they're that important.
I had to take speech class 3 times in college. So just for folks to know that you're not born with the gift of gab, and you don't have to be, you know, a super politician that knows everyone's name to do a good job of making an impression. You make an impression by your passion, by your commitment, by what you believe in, and by the results of your intervention, your engagement. So the question was how you got your first job. So other panelists want to give a let us know how you got your first job. Because that's often hard. You know, people see me as a professor, they forget that I used to be a nonprofit, community organizer making $22,000 when I graduated college in 1996, where $22,000 means more than $22,000 now. But still, it's, you see me now, you don't see me as like where I was. So the first job, like, how did you do that? I don't know if other folks on the panel want to weigh in on this.
I can share. I guess it's kind of like this connection thing, like in the sense that through my different internships and people that I met within the community of DeKalb, I definitely had a lot of opportunities available to me that it was really tough to pick between staying in DeKalb, going back home because I'm from Highland Park, Illinois, so a little bit more north than NIU. But ultimately I decided to go with the college access program that was the same program that my husband participated in high school. And so just the familiarity of seeing him go through that process and understanding, you know, the hands-on support that organization provided was really appealing to me, because most college access programs only really work with students in their junior and senior years, but we worked with them all 4 years. So being able to build those relationships with students was really exciting for me, and I was like ready to be able to work with them. And so because of the connection that I had through him and knowing the school director at the site that I was applying towards, you know, it all things works out. But that's a very like nonprofit-y thing, I feel like, is just, you know, somebody, and if you don't know somebody directly, you know somebody who can get you in somewhere. And so really important to, you know, make those connections wherever you can, because you never know when it'll work out for you.
And particularly now that we're talking in terms of equity and diversity and inclusion, the who you know typically does not benefit folks like us, like folks that come to NIU, folks that are first generation college students, folks that come here from community college. So finding a home like an NGO where you're really tight with each other really, really is helpful. I'm still in touch with my activist comrades from undergrad from the University of Minnesota Morris 30 years later, and we do help each other out. And that is something that Huskies do for Huskies. So that I want to plus one all of that. We have a couple other folks in the panel. Do you want to share how you got your first job? You don't have to. We have a
yeah, I'll share. Yeah, my first job. Do you want me to share about the search and how I got it, or just how I got it?
oh, whatever you want to. This is we're trying to keep this as real as possible. We know.
Okay, so the search, my search was all over the place. I wasn't in any like program. I didn't do AmeriCorps. I went, it was like Google Jobs, Idealist, Huskies Get Hired. I went everywhere. I made a LinkedIn profile, and that actually got me a couple of leads. Like I think two organizations emailed me through my LinkedIn, and then I did my favorite way was to look what type of organizations I wanted to work for and go to their websites and go to the career page and see what was open and apply that way. And I got a couple of leads that way. And it came down to 2 positions, right? And I used midterms, that week we get off, that week, spring break, to apply to, I mass applied the whole entire week. So that was my strategy. And upon graduation, it came down to 2 positions. One position with a professor in the Center for Nonprofit and NGO Studies, Anna Mary, and with her consulting business, and another organization in Chicago that was for higher education. It was called Link Unlimited Scholars, and it came down to those 2 right when I graduated. I had an interview the day of my capstone presentation. I had an interview. I had to go to Chicago. And so it was a lot. The process was a lot. And it came down to that, and the consulting position came on top, just because I wanted to do that more than case management. And so yeah, that's really how it happened. And I had worked with her in Fortitude, which is the center's nonprofit, the student nonprofit consulting team. And I did that for a semester or 2 semesters. And she ran that in the fall of my senior year. And so she knew my work, and that just goes back to what you guys have been talking about connections and just getting familiar with people within the center and in that community, because it really can, it can surprise you. It really can. You might not even think anything of it when you're getting to know people and when you're letting them get to know you, but it can really be impactful in the end. So that's how I got my first job, which is the job I have now, by the way.
So, this is a panel that we are organizing, the first of, we hope, many career conversations. Like I said, there's 276 of you all. And three folks that are going to graduate with majors this semester. We're excited with it having the three of you join the ranks of the alum. But we have one final question that we had prepared, and then we can keep this open for a dialogue with everyone, be able to post their questions. But what advice do you have for current Huskies, particularly for non-seniors? I think a lot of people find career conversations or go to the career center or open that book about how to find a job their senior year or their last semester. And you know, if you could go tell your past self, go into a time machine, like what would you tell yourself in your first semester NIU? Many of you did transfer here from a two-year college, but what advice would you want to offer? And we'll start with Dejia this time.
Okay. I guess experiment as much as you can. Volunteer, do an internship. If you're a freshman, I feel like you should get your class schedule together first. Find out how you work best and get your schoolwork done first, and then add things on. And but before you graduate, get an internship in, get a volunteer experience in there somewhere. Experiment, find out what you like and don't like. You may find out that you don't like something you thought you liked, or you might like something you didn't think you liked. That's really my biggest piece of advice. Experiment and find your optimal work schedule, and get to know yourself, and just, I guess, health over wealth too. Take care of yourself. Don't overwork yourself. And because the work is always going to be there. But yeah, experiment, find out, get to know people on campus, get out there.
Wilfredo, what advice do you offer current Huskies?
Yeah, I guess I would have two main pieces of advice. The first is learning to be comfortable with the uncomfortable. I think, like, at least for me, I had no idea what I was doing. Like, I just knew that I was going on this path, and I feel like a lot of the times I just had no idea where it was going to lead. And I think for me, just like learning to be comfortable with the uncomfortable, it was just a huge step that I needed to make in like my professional development, in terms of being like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing. And you're going to be shocked that 95% of the people don't know what they're doing. And it's going to happen a little bit more organically than you may expect. And I think that that's just part of the process in becoming a professional in terms of like going through college. It's, you should take certain steps, like making sure you get the credits. I think that's important. But I think like in terms of like what's going to happen 20 years from now, like you don't know and nobody knows. And so like accepting that little piece of the unknown is always great. And the last thing I think is what Dejia said, get as much practical experience as you can possibly get in undergrad. It makes college way more fun, and it just seems much more enjoyable. And I think it translates the best to the workspace.
Gretchen, would you like to offer your advice for students?
My advice is don't be afraid to change your mind. I think when you graduate, you feel like, or at least I felt like, I had to figure it all out, right? Especially looking at my parents' generation that stayed in the same job for decades, right? I felt like I had to find a good job and stay there. And that's just not how careers work anymore. I forget, I read some statistic that most people will have something like at least seven different jobs. And I think that's only growing. Don't be afraid to switch around. You can work someplace and find out that you don't like it and look for something else. But that also goes back to what Dejia was saying about try out as many things as you can, right? Do the different volunteer experiences. If you can afford to do an internship, do an internship. And then if you still change your mind, that's fine too. Don't feel like you're locked into anything.
Belle?
Yeah, I think I have two pieces of advice that are somewhat related and, applicable to any like blossoming an NGO student. First is kind of some advice in dealing with at least what I experienced in my kind of imposter syndrome, even like both in college and in my career. I remember when I did my first internship, they really like threw me in there. Like I was in board meetings with big donors. I was writing annual reports. I was doing they were giving me all these things. And I was like, whoa, I'm just a student. Like this is a big deal. And why am I doing this right now? And am I, good enough to be doing this? Do I have the skills right now? And the reality is that I did, and probably a lot more than a lot of other people that were there working. But a lot of that time I was like, do I belong at this table? Like, do I fit in with all of these people that are really important to whatever organization I was at? And I was really fortunate to have a really strong mentor during that first internship who believed in me and pushed me to take on those bigger opportunities and encouraged me to be involved in ways that I could have never imagined for myself. And I think that was really a catalyst for just continuing that and taking on those opportunities and doing more and more to help, me be successful in my career. And then even now, like the organization I work at, we specialize in highly selective universities. So your Harvards and your Yales and stuff like that. And a lot of the people that I work with are coming from these institutions. Like I have a coworker from Vanderbilt and from Harvard and all these places. And so a lot of the times, I'm looking around at this table of people around me and thinking to myself again, like, am I good enough to be here? Like, what, did I do to deserve to be here with versus these other people who have these, fabulous qualifications? But something I remind myself a lot, and my students especially, is like, we're all sitting at the same table. I have the same job as these other people. I get paid the same as these other people. And so, I deserve just as much to be here doing this work and pursuing this career and opportunities as much as they do. So that's my first one. Don't get trapped in imposter syndrome. You all are fabulous and you're going to do wonderful things. And then the second piece of advice really, I guess, came for me more in my my third and fourth year of my career. I was a 2020 graduate, so that first couple of years in the field was virtual, so it looked a lot different than once we eventually transferred back into in-person. Sorry, my cat wants to make an appearance. In the sense that nonprofit work is caring work. Like you're working with real people who have real stories and experiences. And especially with the job that I do, I work very closely with my students and their families and dealing with difficult situations. And during that time, especially when I was in person and most heavily involved, it's so hard to disconnect from that. And it's so hard to separate yourself, especially when, like, if you're someone like me who's very empathic and takes on those emotions and takes on those feelings, because you care and we all care. And that's why we do the work that we do. But it's really, really important to balance and find ways to take care of yourself and focus on yourself and not, overwork yourself. Because something that I've definitely learned is that if you're burnt out and if you're, running on empty, you're not going to be able to do as like strong or whatever of work as you could when you yourself are feeling good and happy. And so just remembering to take care of yourself is in the same way that you're taking care of others is really important too.
Lots of folks connecting with imposter syndrome, and self-care is certainly important. If you have the empathy for others, you do need to give that to yourself. Wanted to wrap this question by asking Cameron advice that you have for Huskies.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's hard to add to that. I think Belle hit it right on the head. I think for me, it's about building up practices and awareness and resiliency. So very, similar to what Belle was sharing, that whether it's imposter syndrome, whether it's dealing with anything, whether it's, depression, generational, oppression, things like that. For me, having awareness earlier on. So answering the question of what would I tell myself what would I tell Cameron in 2013, 2012? It would be, to build up that awareness and build up those practices that build awareness. And with that comes resiliency. And so asking those questions, those hard questions to yourself around, do you really want to do this? Do you feel like you're good at this? And answering that honestly, noting that, right? And building up that practice of asking yourself, those questions regularly. That I believe is where a lot of resiliency comes from. So that when bad things happen, because they will, because you're going to be put in positions that are unfair, people are going to get jobs so that you wanted, or vice versa, and feelings and relationships will get hurt. Having that self-confidence and knowing that you're doing everything you can, and that you have the skills and the experience that you need to get the thing done, whether it's work or life, I think is huge, because you're going to do all the other stuff. You're going to get your internships. You're going to fill out applications. You're going to get to know folks, because myself and most of us here, we're saying things that are wise but not novel, right? You've heard this a million times before, and so just do what you already know how to do.
I was wondering if the panelists wouldn't mind sharing a way to contact you in case current students want to reach out to you 3 years, 5 years, 9 years out, 1 year in a couple cases. That would be great. I'm going to share my screen just to share with you. This is the first of the events. We're doing this the second. Where is this? Oh, no. Too many things open at once. I'm going to try this again. So here we are. So second Monday of the month is going to be our career conversations. The second career conversations we are doing would be careers in fundraising and development. And Joey Moore, I believe, is here in the Zoom right now. She'll be one of the panelists. She's going to be joined by a couple of other NNGO alums and one of my colleagues from Haiti. And I'm trying to also inspire folks to think internationally as well. Next event we're doing is the Real Talk and Big Ideas, the launch of the international launch of the Guide to the Humanitarian System and Development Aid NGOs. We're co-sponsoring this with Tufts University's Feinstein Center. They're a specialist in humanitarian aid. The networking event that Julianne was mentioning is super important. It is a chance to practice how to do this. So that's going to be it's being October 24th. That is a Tuesday. And that is from 5 to 7. That's going to be in the Stevens building in the lobby by the theater. And we're co-sponsoring that with the DeKalb County Nonprofit Partnership. And then our last career conversations for this semester is going to be the first Monday in November. That's November 9th, I believe. And that is going to be about careers working in and with government. So Wilfredo's colleague who went to Madison with him is going to be joining us from Washington, D.C., as well as other folks as well. So I'm going to stop my share. So you can see the email addresses for folks that are on the panel. So we have time. We have 15 minutes for questions from the audience. I will do my very best to take a peek at the chat. Julianne, if you wouldn't mind sharing your screen so that we can, some folks are looking for a QR code or two. So I see that Carol has her hand up. So do you want to ask that question?
Yes. So one thing I like that you guys were talking about was how networking and making connections is really great. And I think that I'm not like tooting my own horn, but I think that I'm good at making connections and talking to people, depending on our shared interests. But a problem I've had is continuing those connections because you don't want to be unprofessional. It's like, oh, let's go to a bar or, anything like that. You want to be more professional. But
obviously people are also busy. So it's like if you send them that message on LinkedIn or anything like that, and you don't really get a response, like what's a good way to maintain connections?
Yeah, I think anchoring it in those shared interests is huge. There's some, I'm sure now, really antiquated notion that you can only manage like 125, relationships at once, which was rooted in some old, philosophy, in ancient Roman time. But I use a platform called Dex to kind of manage a lot of my business relationships, and so it's a way to just for me to just chart out and to put people in buckets. So then that way, if I know, Mark, and I'm entirely making this up. If Mark Schuler loves golf or loves, reading about organizing, community organizing, putting Mark and other folks that care about that into like a hopper or a grouping. So that way, as I see content or see something or think about it, I can reach out to Mark and say like, hey, I just saw this. I thought of you. Hope you're well. That kind of thing.
I am way less sophisticated than that. I, I do not have a system like that. I add people to my email contact lists. For me, what has worked for me, staying in the DeKalb community, which is relatively small, is just participating in events or meetings where I know people with that shared interest or passion are going to be. So like in the DeKalb area, the Chamber of Commerce has this women's leadership group called Gather. I am a member of Gather. And when I go, I see people that I have connected with through other committees or that were my point person for a grant, like with Northwestern Medicine. And we stay in touch that way. And then connecting on LinkedIn, I don't use LinkedIn regularly, but it kind of reminds me of those connections I have. So when I am looking for somebody, I can go through that list and say, that's right, I know so-and-so that is working in food security. I should really get their opinion. And I think asking for somebody's opinion rather than their participation is a really great way to connect. So I can say, Joey, I know that you are really connected to our English language learners in DeKalb School District. Do you have any advice on how I should approach getting participation in this focus group? Right? And Joey may or may not have the answer, but it builds our connection there. And she knows that I trust and value her opinion.
Yeah, I just want to echo that. I am on the same exact boat as you, Carol. Like, I hate cold emailing people. I hate cold messaging people. I think it's so awkward. And I always feel like, I don't know. I'm always just like, this is not me. But I think I want to echo what Gretchen said. Something that I do that sort of helps me do it naturally is just keep going to events. Like, for example, at like at my firm this summer, like the whole point is to network within like the partners and they get to know you. And so you go to as many events as possible. Like, and just being there, it sort of helps it organically. Like, you get to know your name, they get to know your face, and you get to carry on conversations. Now, and the second way is that I sort of do it is that I am pretty involved on LinkedIn. Now, I'm also also an old man. I hate posting stuff. I'm always so I do what I do simple. LinkedIn is great because if you like something, it says your name like this. And keeping that and just being a refresher in their mind, it's almost like you continue a relationship with them without having to like reach out and cold email. Now, it's important to learn how to cold email because I've had to do it. And, someday maybe you will have to do it. So it's an important aspect. But if it's not as natural to you, there's other steps you can take. Like, I know that the executive director of CASA in DeKalb County back when I was an undergrad, which was like a advocacy group in the courtroom, like she came to a bunch of NGO stuff. So anytime there was an NGO and something NGO related happening, I usually went and I talked straight with her right away every single time. Now, will she remember me? Because I haven't seen her in a while, probably not. But I think during my time in college, I just was able to go. I go and I talk to her, and was able to build some sort of relationship with her.
Great question, great responses. From keeping it old school to the more specific social networking technologies. What your play to your strengths, if you're good at the, one or the other, and you could find yourself gravitating towards one or the other. But something I heard from everyone is establishing a base of common ground, like that you're here, that you show up, that your face is recognized, that your name is recognized. Don't be a stranger. Other questions, other reactions? There's the Honors Engage direct link. Thank you, Julianne. I had this image of people having their phones right up there, like scanning the QR code. I'm glad we have another way of doing this. I'm old school myself, so.
I thought this would be easier.
All right. Other questions can type in the chat.
As we're waiting, in case as you guys are popping in the chat or thinking about if you have final questions, two different things. Joey Moore from the Barb Food Mart, as we're talking about connections and paid internships, would love to talk about a paid internship opportunity that Barb Food Mart has right now.
Not to take a lot of time, but this is our first semester where we're able to offer a somewhat fairer compensation, more fair compensation for an internship opportunity. So I dropped the link into the chat, and it is 6 hours a week, $16 an hour, and you would intern with myself. It would be half administrative and half volunteer coordination. So you'd get your hands on a lot of different things. But we're really excited to have somebody join our team, semester-long internship. Any questions, you can direct them to me, but otherwise the link is in the chat. We've worked really hard to advocate for internships that come with compensation that would allow you to choose an internship. So thinking about that inclusivity has been really important for our organization. And this is year 10 for us. And it's the first time that we've been healthy enough financially to be able to offer something like this.
I will say too, we've placed many interns with Joey in the Barb Food Mart, and she's a really great mentor and supervisor. It's more than just a job. So thank you for that, Joey. I'm also, Gretchen, I know that you had offered at the beginning a very special gift. And so just want to remind you at the end, it would be great to announce that.
Yes, so I had a randomizer wheel that I pulled up. Everybody that's not facilitating this conversation that had their camera on, I put your name into that, and Carol was our winner. Julianne gave me your student email address, so I've actually already sent that Amazon gift card. And if you don't see it, my email should be in the chat, so just email me.
Nice, thank you. I love
Congratulations, Carol. That's
Thanks.
awesome. Thanks, Gretchen.
Mm-hmm.
I believe Rodolfo had a question. If you're comfortable unmuting yourself, you can ask the question, or else you can type it in the chat.
Yes, how's it going, everyone? My name is Rodolfo Arroyo, and I wanted to ask a question for Wilfredo. Unfortunately, I arrived a little late, maybe like 15 minutes late. Wilfredo, could you talk to me about your law school experience and anything in regards to your career field?
Yeah, sure. So I went to law school at University of Wisconsin. I graduated this past May. And so I guess for me, my experience with law school, sometimes I love law school, but man, it was hard. I think that was one thing that I knew was going to be hard, but even I underestimated how hard it was going to be. It was a lot of work. But I loved it. Like I always say, I get my brain juices flowing, and I know that's a really strange word to use, but it was just so much fun. When I was in law school, I got the chance to do some really cool things too. And for example, I got to work in the Wisconsin Department of Justice. And there I did some post-conviction work, which is pretty much at the end of the trial, somebody filed saying something went wrong with their case. And at the time I was representing the state. And basically it's like you look over the case, you see if anything happened. And I got to file some briefs for the Court of Appeals, and that was a fantastic experience to do. And then a lot of my work is involved in the private sector, which is an interesting shift from NGO studies to here. The main work I've done was really making sure that corporations are following the rules. And another aspect of things is really working on I got to do some real estate work. I got to make sure that like if some things are iffy, like, making sure that it doesn't lead to a problem. And ultimately what I want to do is like litigation, which is just trial work. Mainly because I do enjoy writing quite a bit. And I think that's where I've gotten, sort of put my focus on.
All right, thank you. I was just curious. I'm in the admissions process right now, and I plan to attend law school next spring. I mean, not next spring, next fall.
Yeah, no, good luck. I think if it were me, like looking back on it, I studied a lot for the LSAT, which is the law school admissions test. And Khan Academy was my saving grace. If you do not know about Khan Academy, you're interested about law school, Khan Academy is free. I studied for purely through Khan Academy, and I just ordered practice books on Amazon. And that's
how long did you study for? I've been studying for about 3 months now.
Yeah, so I think if you're planning on applying for law school, I would aim for the July admissions or the July exam. I don't know exactly when you're trying to apply, if you're trying to apply in the spring or for next year. For me, at least, I found it most beneficial to take the July LSAT because I studied, so I got to study like pretty much. So I was also working in Chicago at the time, and so I would study for the LSAT on the 1.5-hour ride train right to Chicago, and I studied at an 1.5-hour ride train back, and I used to have an hour lunch, and so I used to study for the LSAT in the hour lunch, and that's how I made it. And I think something that helped me was when I was like the test wasn't shaking as much, and it was quiet when I took it. And so yeah, I think aim for an hour in the day, an hour at night, and try to fit an hour in the middle at some point, or 30-minute segments. And I think that'd be your best bet.
For how long did you study, in terms of months or weeks?
I studied for about 3 months.
Okay, thank you so much.
And just remember, people have put also for more, if you have more questions, Wilfredo and everybody put their emails in the chat.
Been an hour and a half. I know that this is a longish on the Zoom's calendar. Hope folks have got more brain juices, to use Wilfredo's terms. If not, take a few moments, take a walk, get some fresh air, put the umbrella if you need the umbrella, if it's raining over there. Yeah, I wanted to be sure that before everyone left en masse, that we had take a moment to thank our 5 amazing alum for coming back to sharing their experiences, their analysis, their advice with us. So really, really thank you. It is really amazing to work with such great people. And it's great to know that you all are continuing to do that great work that you had that spark to do when you were a student at NIU. It said the next series is going to be the first Monday in October, so that's the 9th, and then it's the 13th in November. So if you're interested in more of these career conversations, please do stay tuned. This is being recorded so that we can post it on our YouTube channel. Julianne, if you could find it, I can find it and put the link in the chat. If you could find it faster, I'm kind of punting right now, but I do want to say that you all are you're here, and that's wonderful. And it would be wonderful if everyone who is here can bring a friend to our next event, so that more folks can hear about this amazing work that alum and our friends like Joey are doing. So with that, I will, if we do have that YouTube, yeah, it takes us a while. It's like 5 clicks. But Google us, or it's on our main web. Maybe just the main page for NNGO, and then they could find it from there.
You know what, Mark, we can send out a link as a thank you tomorrow, because it's not on our main page.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you all for coming, especially warm thank you to the 5 alum. Have a good rest of your evening, and stay in touch.
Joey, can you drop your link again for the job?
Absolutely. I'm just going to drop the link to Huskies Get Hired, and then the students have a login on Huskies Get Hired where they'll be able to find it. And then it's pretty cool. I get to see